Today's awesome interview is with Sarah Weaver. Sarah has such a unique and interesting and fascinating story to share with everyone. She's actually in New Zealand right now, right? Doing this interview that you're going to watch today, because that's where she's living currently. That's where she loves to travel. She's been to 44 countries, and she's managed to find a way to hack her life to do what she loves. So she works remotely for a company based here in the US. And is able to travel all over. So she's currently in New Zealand, resides in New Zealand. What she does is she brings investors together with agents and agents together with investors, and helps investors reach their goals and find contractors and all that good stuff. So really fascinating interview today, and I really enjoyed it because obviously I enjoy traveling as well. And the fun thing is she set herself the goal of getting to 10 podcasts this year, and I was able to help her reach that goal. So I was number 10. So really cool interview today. Stick around for all of it. As always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel. Go to the WWRE podcast and give me a 5-star rating and write me a review if you think it's worthy. And I'm looking to speak to as many of you as possible. If you're interested in real estate, in whatever capacity that is, I'd love to get to know you, see if there's any way whatsoever I can help you. So go to the link in the description down below and sign there, or go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com and sign up there. We can jump on a call and get to know each other and see how I can help you. But before that, enjoy today's awesome interview with Sarah Weaver. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we have Sarah Weaver join us. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Barry. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, my pleasure to have you. We were talking beforehand. Sarah's got an absolutely fascinating story. She's got so much going on. It's really interesting to me. I had to cut myself short because I had so many questions. I was like, okay, we got to start recording here. So before we dive into all that good stuff, do you want to give us an idea about your background, what you've been up to, and what you're up to currently?
Absolutely. So I have been in real estate for almost 6 years now, and 5 of those have been remote. And so I've been working remotely from my computer. I've traveled to more than 40 countries. And about 2 years ago, January will be my 2-year anniversary of being what I call home baseless. So I'm not homeless because I own multiple homes now, as we'll talk about, but I am home baseless, completely nomadic. COVID has changed everything, and we'll kind of talk about that as well. But as you can hear, I have an American accent. I'm originally from Kansas City, but I'm actually currently in New Zealand.
How cool is that, right? So I'm sorry to get you to repeat yourself, but you've told me, but this is such an interesting story. Tell us how you ended up in New Zealand, because this is so cool to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So November of last year, I flew over to Asia, and I stayed over there, and I kind of home based myself out of Bali starting in January. It tends to be a digital nomad hotspot, and I thought I'd give it a try. And that is kind of when the world turned upside down. I happened to be in Malaysia on a girls' weekend, casual. It's what you do when you're a digital nomad. You just meet up with your friends in Georgetown. And so I was in Malaysia when the US president did the Europe ban, is what I kind of call it. And that was on March 14th, Asia time. And my jaw dropped. I mean, I thought, oh, beep, like what is going to happen? And so I wrote in my diary countries I'd want to be trapped in. And I think in my head, I was like, in case the world closes down, which it kind of did. Mm-hmm. And number 1 was New Zealand. And so long story short, I applied for a visitor visa, tried to have a restless night of sleep, ordered an Uber to the airport, and asked them to put me on the next flight to Singapore so that I could catch a flight from Singapore to New Zealand, which I did.
Wow. So that's interesting that you were in Malaysia, in Asia at the time, right? Because how were things there at the time with COVID? Were things crazy, or were they not? How did things seem at that point?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So even in January, when I boarded a flight on January 3rd, I wore a mask because we were all talking about COVID. Like it was a conversation piece, not obviously at the level that it is now, but we were all talking about it. So I flew from the Philippines to Indonesia, wore a mask. And then every 30 days, I flew to Singapore to do a visa run, and I would wear a mask. And when I landed in Singapore, you got your temperature checked. People were in full hazmat suits. When I was in Malaysia, I think in Singapore, they were in protective gear, but it wasn't scary, but it was kind of like, this feels weird. Yeah. And they checked your temperature. You went through another scan like you do like a normal TSA, but you actually did it the moment you got off the plane, as well as when you obviously go through regular security. So that was an additional security. You got your temperature checked multiple times. I went to the movie theater in Singapore, either in February or in March. And even to go into the movie theater, I got my temperature checked. To go into the mall, they had people sitting there with these big screen TVs. And at first I didn't know what they were doing, but they were heat body sensors. And so as you were walking into the mall, you were being tracked. Like if you looked like you had a fever, they would pull you aside and do further temperature checks.
That's great. We don't even have that here right now, those body temperature. Yeah, that's so.
I know.
And interesting as well that it was back in January that this was, it didn't really kind of go crazy here, like you said, until kind of March time, right? That's just, yeah, it's fascinating. When did you go to Asia first? Well, how long were you out there? When did
that was November. So November 2019. I took 7 weeks off in between jobs and did a motorcycle trip through Vietnam and backpacks through some countries, and just had this like killer adventure after working really long, amazing hours for 4.5 years. I just was like, I'm going to really take time off in between. Cause you're married to an American. We don't really take that much time off. No. Like 10 days vacation is like standard. And so for me, it was important to me that I negotiated those 7 weeks off in between switching jobs.
Yeah. That's always amazes me. Like I think the standard in the UK is 21 days. And even in the UK, I don't think we're quite as high as some other European countries, but that's more than double what you're allowed here. So when I realized that, I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy, right? But it is what it is. But so what do you think the travel bug comes from? You say you've traveled to 40 countries. That's pretty amazing, right? I'm guessing you're an avid traveler. Where do you think the travel bug came from for you?
Yeah, it's funny. My parents aren't avid travelers. I think they'd like to be, but they definitely aren't. So it's not from them. It's not from my childhood. But my dad, funny enough, he blames summer camp. He said that I first went to summer camp for a week, which again, is I'm learning now is a really American thing. So I went to summer camp for a week, and then I came home and I said, I'm going to volunteer for a month next summer. And so then the next summer I went for a month. And then that continued for a few summers. And then finally I came home and I said, I'm not going to summer camp next year. And my parents said, oh my God, like what's wrong? Is something wrong? And I said, no, instead I'm going to road trip America and go visit my friends. And they looked at me like, Sarah, you're 17, like you're not doing that. And I was like, oh, you watch. And sure enough, the next summer we negotiated a deal. They let me drive to Indianapolis, doing a road trip along the way, stopping at different places. And they flew there because they're amazing parents. Yeah. And then they drove home with me, which was good compromise.
Yeah. Well, that was nice of them. Yeah. And obviously they kind of let you do your thing but still kind of make it work. That's cool though. At 17 that you how long did that take you?
Gosh, I don't remember, but living in Kansas, so I grew up in Kansas City, and being in the middle of America, I mean, we did road trips. We drove everywhere. Like my little Honda Civic back then had touched almost every coast, every Great Lake. Like it had been everywhere.
That's so cool. So you said 40. Do you remember the 40 countries? No, let's give a high level. 40 countries, it'll take a while, but give us an idea.
Yes.
Maybe continents. Cover continents, not countries, maybe.
Yep. So I've been to 44 countries on 6 of the 7 continents. I have not been to Antarctica, and I'll probably save that for later in life. But yeah, I've touched every continent except for Antarctica and 44 countries.
Wow. What are some of the favorite ones? You probably can't name a favorite, right? But what are some of the favorite countries?
I get asked this question a lot, and okay. So I have categories. So for nature, it is Canada, like Banff, Canada, and New Zealand, and Scotland. Those are the 3 most beautiful countries. Yeah.
Scotland, come on, really?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I would agree with you, but Scotland, okay. Wasn't it raining the whole time you were there?
No, I'm like this, I'm this anomaly. Every time I go to Ireland, I get a sunburn. I've had great weather in the Lake District of the UK. Like, so if anyone wants to travel to the UK, bring me with you. I always have good weather.
Yeah, you'll bring the weather, they can pay for the flight, right? That seems like a fair deal.
Exactly.
Okay.
And,
And then how do you like Asia?
oh, so food,
Yeah.
my favorite food in the entire world is Thailand and Japan.
Mm.
That's the best food. But right now I'm hanging out with a lot of Argentinians here in New Zealand, and we just talk about asado. And so I do have to plug in asado in Argentina is just to die
What
for.
is asado? You,
It's just their word that they use for their barbecue. So
oh,
like the best meat that I've ever had is not at some fancy restaurant in some Michelin star, but it is in someone's backyard in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I mean, the meat there is just phenomenal.
yeah, I have some Argentinian friends, and they say they have the best meat in the world. But I didn't believe them, but I guess they do. And they love meat, right? You just get meat on. When you go, what do they eat there? Meat on meat on meat with meat, right? With a side of meat.
Exactly.
But it's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
How cool! How cool! So what do you? I asked you before, but I don't think I've asked you yet. What do you do for work? What allows you to travel? What is giving you that nomadic lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do work for a company. I'm a W-2 salaried employee. I have a boss, and I work for a real estate brokerage. So funny enough, it's laughable now. The brokerage is based out of Seattle, Washington, but I have never been to Seattle. Even when I got hired on, I did meet my boss in person in Nashville. I was living in Mexico at the time, and we met in Nashville. But I've never been to Seattle. And then what's extra funny is that my boss has sold her house, all of her belongings, bought a huge RV and a truck. And she, her husband, and their 5-year-old are traveling through the US by RV right now.
Is that all down to you? Were you the inspiration behind that?
No, her
Oh,
and I, man, someone along the way in my previous job heard my story and said, "Oh my goodness, you have to meet Jennifer." And Jennifer and I are just totally two peas in a pod. We work too much, but we love to travel. We love real estate investing, and we love helping people live the life that they want. And so I love sharing this story because I really truly am an example that you can live where you want if you're investing where the numbers make sense.
mm, yeah, yeah. People, I think a lot of people feel like they have to invest where they live, right? And that's not necessarily the case. And now, obviously, it's not that simple, but obviously something that you deal with all the time. I'm guessing, right? Maybe talk. What are people's biggest fear, and then I'm guessing you guys help them overcome those fears to some extent, right?
Exactly. So part of my job is connecting investors with agents and vice versa. And so I'm spending my time building great relationships with real estate agents across the US who are investment savvy. And there is a huge difference between an agent, I just call it that they get it. Like you can talk about cap rate, you can talk about cash on cash, capital expenditures, vacancy rates, and they don't bat an eye. They're like, yep, yep, yep. Then they can spit out all of the things. Or you can talk to a real estate agent who maybe they're closing 15 to 30 million a year, but they have no idea any of the R's in BRRRR strategy. And so my job is really finding the agents that get it. And then once we do, I connect them with the investors that Jennifer's built the community of all of these real estate investors who are interested in buy and hold rentals, usually in places that they don't live. And don't get me wrong, if you live in a
Yeah.
state and it makes sense to invest in your backyard, do that. Like that's easy. But if you're living in Seattle or San Francisco, I mean, no, like invest in Tennessee where you can buy a duplex for $180,000.
Yeah. Well, how is she finding these investors? She's just built a platform that she's.
Yeah, it's been quite a few years of building relationships with investors through in-person meetups. Remember when we could do those? And now everything's virtual. So we have a mastermind group that's running really strong. And we put on monthly events. I'm actually really excited to share. There was about 190 coming to our events pretty regularly between like March and July. And last month we welcomed 600 people to our virtual meetup.
Wow. What caused that? You think? What? That's a huge jump from
Huge jump. I mean, just absolute credit to our marketing team. I think that she has been in a phenomenal change in our company. But also I think that the value that we're bringing, you're not coming to our meetups and it's like, here's this big secret, spend $20,000 and I'll tell you how. That's not it. It's no, come and hang out for an hour and you're going to get so much information that you're going to wish that you could pause the live video, which is why we send a replay, because it's just so action-packed and information-packed.
Yeah, that's interesting. So then how does the whole thing work to some extent, right? Obviously, find investors, find agents, put them together, right? But outside of that, do you guys help them find a market? Because obviously, find an agent, right? There's agents all over the US, right? You recommend market, like how much advice, I guess, do you guys give the investors, and how much guidance do you give the investors?
Yeah, so I think if an investor joins our mastermind, it's really handholding. So if you want us to tell you where we think you should invest and why, and connect you with an agent, and connect you with a property manager and the contractors in case it needs renovation, which, by the way, like I'm trying to do a full out-of-state burr. So it's like a full renovation gut job, all from afar, because I have an on-the-ground team that will do that for me. And so that's kind of what you get when you become a member of our mastermind.
Oh, how cool. So and is there just from a fee structure, how does that work?
Yep. So it's a quarterly fee, or you can join annually. We are raising our price on January 1st. So I don't know when this will air, but I won't mention the price in case it's gone up.
Smart move. But that's cool. Yeah. Because obviously so how do you guys find these teams? Because finding a contractor, finding a property manager can be challenging, right? But not only are you doing that, but you're doing it in multiple markets. Are you just situated in a few markets? How many markets are you in, and how are you finding that team, I guess?
Yeah, I think, gosh, what am I in now? I think we're in 37 markets.
Wow.
And it's my almost full-time job to build relationships with these agents. And so I'm doing it a number of ways, mostly referral, because great investor agents know other great investor agents. And then also I follow investors. So like if I know an investor owns 100 units, I'm going to find out, do they like their agent? Is their agent like wanting more clients? And then there's really a list of questions. So one of the best ways we found one of our really successful agent partners is I looked in the market that I was interested in, and I noticed that all of the multifamily properties were listed by the same woman. So I called her and I said, hey, would you like buyers for all of your listings? And not only has she closed $14 million with just our investors this year, she also started a property management company, and I think they manage over 600 doors now.
Wow, that's incredible. So then you find an agent in a market, and then do you use that agent to find contractors and property managers if they don't handle their?
Yep, exactly.
So that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's whether if they join your mastermind, I think that would be great. I think especially when you're starting out, to have someone be able to provide all this thing is phenomenal. I think you guys provide a phenomenal service. But outside of that, find one person, right? I've always said that when you're investing out of state, find one person, find one rock star, right? Find one amazing person, and it's usually an agent is a phenomenal place to start, because they usually have this team around them, right? The good ones have a team around them, right? They know contractors, they know property managers, they know insurance brokers, they know lenders, they know all of that. So I think that's brilliant. That's kind of what the first point of entry that you guys go with. Yeah.
Well, and they're protective of their reputation. So they're not going to refer you to 1-800 the plumber, because they care so deeply about their reputation that everyone they refer, or I should say a good agent cares about their reputation, and everyone they refer is an extension of them and an extension of their reputation. And so I've found that agents are really protective over who they refer people to, because it's a two-way street. And so if you're a real estate investor, you also need to be someone that we want to refer to. And you kind of need to be like the best client that you can be, so that your agent is excited to share their Rolodex with you.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's so true. What a cool model. I love this. How are you choosing markets then? Do you just find, is it more a case of where you find investors are interested, or do you go and find where markets you like and then bring the investors to those markets?
Yeah, usually the latter. I have a formula of what I'm looking for in a market that includes things like population growth, job growth, wage growth, and a few other things. And then the numbers. Like if you can't buy a multifamily for this price and rent it out for this, then it's probably not going to work.
So, and a lot of times do you help people, do you guide people towards multifamily more than single family?
It's a mix.
Okay.
So I personally am really interested in the small multifamily. I'm at the beginning stage of building my portfolio. And so I like leveraging conventional financing.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm interested in like the 1 to 4 units.
Mhm.
But then every investor in our group is different. I mean, someone that maybe has already maxed out their conventional loan spots, or they owned something in expensive Seattle. Now they're doing a 1031 exchange into a 24 unit. Everyone in our group kind of has a different story. And I think the number one way to figure out what your strategy should be is to figure out what are you good at and what are your goals.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously anyone could buy any piece of property, right? But it's got to fit, like you said, what are you looking for, what your time constraints are, what all that stuff, right? There's a million different pieces that goes into a puzzle piece that fits you personally, right? It's not one size fits all at any time. So I think that's cool that you guys take that into consideration as well. So you tell,
Exactly.
you said that you're doing a Burr property yourself now, right? Personally, right? We'll talk about the other stuff that you own, but this one was interesting. So you're doing it obviously from New Zealand. So talk us a little bit about this. Where is it? The agent that found it, all that good stuff, please.
Yeah, so our agent sent it over, and it's funny, the numbers were okay but not great, and so I passed it along, meaning I didn't inquire on it. But then I went back and I looked at everything we had sent out the month before, because what we do is the agents send us deals, then we turn around and we send those deals directly same day to our group of investors. So when you join our mastermind, not only do you get all the connections, but you get an email every day with properties available that you can purchase. And so what I had done is I went back and just was looking through what we had sent in October, and found out that one of the properties was still on the market. And so I reran the numbers and I realized that I could buy it using conventional financing and it would cash flow, or I could buy it using hard money. I could renovate it, rent it out, and refinance using the Burr method, and I could get all of my capital back. So like a true Burr, which is pretty unheard of these days. Like usually when you're burring, it's still a really good deal if you're leaving $5,000 to $10,000 in the deal. And so I went under contract, and it has been anything but easy. My agent is amazing, and we both have really great senses of humor, but the seller it's been so incredibly difficult. I think what happened is the seller's son found out that his dad was selling. Now he has seller's remorse. He's trying to tell his dad not to sell, but he's under contract. Like I'm going to buy the house.
Oh, wow.
And so it's been quite the journey. Then I went from thinking that it was $75,000 of renovations to it's probably a little closer to 110.
Oh.
And I always do a 20% cushion. So even when I thought it was 75 grand, I told myself, well, it's 90 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now if it's actually 110, 115, and I do a 20% cushion, I'm like, oh my gosh, even at $120,000 of renovations, this is still a deal.
Wow. Well, that's a killer deal then, considering how much you initially thought that your renovation.
It's a really good deal.
What caused that renovation budget to go up then?
Oh gosh, it's bad, Barry. So there is cockroaches, bed bugs, a sinking ceiling in the kitchen. Like it's a full gut job basically. We definitely thought it was an extensive renovation, but I thought some things would be salvageable, but not really. I mean, at this point, it's just like, let's just gut the whole thing.
How did your agent find it? Was it on the MLS, or was it through some of the agents find wholesales, or is everything pretty much on the MLS?
Yeah, it's probably like 70-30 or 60-40, meaning 60% is on the MLS and the others are off market. But this was actually listed on the MLS.
Oh, wow. What do you mind me asking what the purchase price was?
Yeah, so this is so funny. So it was listed. I know it had been on the market for 45 days at the time, and it was listed for 225, which is unreal over what it should be. So I offered 130. And they didn't counter.
Uh-huh.
They accepted my offer.
Wow.
And I said, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And my agent said, yeah, but I kept you in the dark on all the negotiation that went back. Like, so I have a great agent. He did a killer job.
So what was some stuff that was happening with the negotiation? And if you're able to share, if you're not, don't worry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't even ask. I just said, great, thanks. I trust you. And let's move on to the next thing.
Oh, okay. That's good.
So
where is the property?
So it's in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, yeah.
And here's the really cool thing. So it's 130, and the neighbor next door with almost an identical duplex bought at Christmas for 103, sold at around 4th of July for 330.
Wow.
And Zillow has the before and after photos because it has the first listing photos and then the new listing photos. So I'm using that as like, okay, here, contractor, do this.
Yes.
And then obviously I'm hoping that I can get an after repair value of 330.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So I'm guessing there's nobody in there right now, right? It's that bad of a problem.
There is.
There is? Oh.
There is possibly 4 or 5 grown men living in each side. And I'm not asking any questions. I want to know less information. But it's sad. I mean, it's cockroach infested. There's bed bugs. I've heard of course, like people living in places like this and then having like, really big screen TVs or nice tennis shoes. There is an 85-inch television in the basement. I mean, I haven't bought a TV in like years, but I think that's what, a $2,000, $3,000 television. I mean, it's sad. It makes me really sad. And so my goal is to go in, make it really beautiful so that it's a nice place to live for someone.
Yeah. So do you have, so how much involvement, because it seems like maybe you're quite hands off with this, right? Which is great. How involved are you with everything? Is it more you show those pictures to your contractor and you kind of came up with a business plan and you say, hey, go implement this and call me in 6 months, or are you on the phone daily, making decisions?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what my answer is once I go under contract. But right now, like I just had my inspection on Monday. Okay. So I'm still under contract. The seller has been anything but easy to work with. He's just been incredibly difficult. And so I've probably been, I would say I'm involved like a moderate amount. So normally I'd probably be involved less if it's a smooth transaction, but this is not a smooth transaction. And then when it comes to the renovation, I want to be an ideal client to work with. So I will set my expectation with the contractor and he will set his, and then we'll probably meet somewhere in the middle. So I'm not going to require that we speak every day. I am probably going to say, at least at the beginning or during different times, that we speak every week. And then maybe if there's nothing to update me on, I mean, there's no reason that he can't just send me a text and tell me what's going on. And then that can be that. And so I really want to be someone that the next great deal that comes along, both the agent and the contractor are like, hey, Sarah, we have this off-market property. Do you want it? I want to be whatever client they want me to be.
That's such a good point, right? Because they're the ones finding the deals, right? Well, the contractor could be, but the agent is obviously the one finding the deals and they're close with the contract. So you, like you said, you want to be someone that they want to work with, right? You want to be, like you said, that ideal client, someone that doesn't cause issues. That's, of course, if there's issues to bring up, you've got to bring them up, right? You can't just let that scare you. But I like that a lot. So you said that. What do you think that looks like to someone who thinks, okay, I want to be an ideal client too? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it just like a dating relationship. If you want to be in a business relationship with someone and you want to be the best client, ask them. Like you should be asking your wife, like, what do you need? Like, what does an ideal relationship look like for you? Because someone's answer is totally different than another. So for example, I know a team, they want to be incredibly thorough and they want you to say, yes, I received this email. So they want instant communication. Whereas I have another agent that sometimes I go weeks without hearing from him, but I trust that he's getting the work done. And if I do send him a text, he might not get back to me that day, but he'll get back to me within 24 hours.
Mm.
And so it looks different with everyone. And also I probably look different than other people. But I think if you're listening to this and you're wondering like, yeah, I want to be on the top of this wholesaler's list, or I want to be on the top of that agent's list, there's no shame in picking up the phone and saying like, hey, how do I win with you?
Yeah.
Like, do we need to go have a steak dinner? Because like I'll do that. Or if you just want me to buy 10 properties this year, then I'll do that. So what does that look like for you?
God, that's so simple but brilliant. And we look past that so many times, right? We just try and figure it out in our heads and try and figure it. But what's wrong with asking? It's a win-win, right? You're not asking them for any personal information, their bank account details or anything like that. You're asking for how can you help make their money, essentially. How can you make work together that benefits everyone? I love that. That's brilliant. That's just so simple but brilliant at the same time. And I think a lot of the brilliant stuff, the most brilliant stuff is the simplest stuff a lot of times, right? So going back to the relationship with that contractor, I know you guys haven't started work yet on this project, but how, you talked about setting expectations. Do you have a contract with them? How are you setting everything up? Do you have, a contract in terms of what you expect the budget to be, what kind of work you expect, what kind of communicate you have, or do you just have trust in them at this point?
Yep. So everything will be a contract, and everyone works a little bit differently. So like I said, this is my first one, but other investors in our group have done this. And so some contractors will add on a project fee at the end. Some of them will do 10% of the total cost. Everyone's a little bit different. I know that this one is wanting a certain percentage up front, a certain percentage when we're 75% of the way through completion, and then the last payment at the end. And so he'll actually include all of it in one lump sum, whereas others are going to have you pay the painter and you pay the different general contractors or subs. And so everyone's a little bit different.
And do you have a preference? Probably for you, it's easier just to pay the contractor if you can, right, from where you are, rather than having to manage it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm at a place now where I'm at the beginning, so I still want a lot of involvement. And my dad is a contractor. And so I know a lot through osmosis, more than like probably someone who wouldn't have contact in that world. And so I probably want a little more. Also, my job allows for so much flexibility, whereas a lot of members in our group are really high net worth individuals. Maybe they're an engineer at Boeing, or they're a doctor at a hospital in San Francisco. And so they don't have time for that. And so they want to pay a professional to take care of it. And so sometimes you have to figure out and examine like, what's your situation?
Yeah, interesting. And do you guys have a typical client that you guys work with? Are you saying that, is it someone that has less time, that's a higher net worth individual? Do you work with all kinds of investors?
Yeah, all kinds of investors. I think the common thread that I'm finding is that we all, whatever our why is, it's a little bit different. Like someone in our group has a child with a disability, so they're building net worth so that they can take care of that child financially. We have another person in the group that wants to retire by 35 because he has a young kid and he doesn't like his job. And so I think everyone's why is a little bit different, but the common thread is that we are all buy and hold investors. So some people flip, but that's definitely not our go-to. Some people do notes and syndications and other things, but I would really say that a buy and hold investor is our go-to. And we all want to live a really big life. And so like not everyone in my group wants to travel, but travel's a really common theme. More time with your family, less time at work. And so freedom is definitely the common thread between anyone that joins our group.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about real estate, right? That can provide all those things that you talked about, right? If people have all kinds of different goals and aspirations, but that real estate can kind of provide that for people. I think it's
well, and it's just the vehicle. Like for me,
yeah.
It's all consuming because it's my full-time job. It's now become my passion and my hobby. But for other people, it's just a vehicle. So like real estate investing doesn't have to be what you talk about at happy hour. It can just be the vehicle to get wherever you're going.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, it's one of the best vehicles. That's cool. So I think you also said that you own two other properties.
Yep. So I have a single family in Kansas. I bought it in 2017.
Okay.
And then I have a duplex in Missouri. They're only, probably 25-minute drive from one another, but it's on the other side of the border, and that's a duplex.
So what made you buy in Kansas City in 2017? That was your first ever investment property, right?
Yeah, so I was
Well,
living I was living in beautiful Denver, Colorado, and I was trying to make the numbers work out there and I just couldn't. I mean, properties are just really expensive. Everything I was looking at, even if I house hacked and lived in the property, I still wasn't making money or breaking even. And so I started looking at numbers in Kansas City because that's where I grew up and my parents live there, and the numbers are amazing. So I sadly, with tears in my eyes, packed up a U-Haul. They gave me the biggest U-Haul in the parking lot, and I was, I mean, what, I was 27 at the time, and I was like, wait, you want me to drive this like by myself for like 10 hours? And it was like, it wasn't even half full. I didn't have very many things. And so I drove across I-70 and I bought a house in Kansas, that I actually ended up renovating down to the studs and renovating it, putting it back together. And then I rented out the rooms to different roommates. And for the listeners out there, they're like, oh, that sounds terrible. I never want to like live with my tenants. I barely did. I spent, I think, 4 to 5 months abroad that year.
oh, wow.
So I was the dream roommate, because the best roommate to ever have is the roommate that's never there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. What a cool story in itself. So how do you make that work? Because obviously then do you have everyone on auto pay? And I'm guessing there's a lot more turnover in a rent by room kind of situation, or not? How does it all work?
That's what I was, yeah, that's what I was afraid of. And a lot of people kind of erred on and said, don't do rent by the room. But it's actually been amazing. I have one tenant that's been there the whole time. And so she's kind of, I consider her like the matriarchy of the house now. And she gets approval of the tenants that move in, because they all have to get along. They have to live together. And so thankfully I've had another girl, she just renewed her lease. So she's been there for 2 years. And then the third room has kind of been a revolving door. There's been someone new every year, but it's been great. And everyone's happy. They get along. There's no problems. Knock on wood.
so, so what made you decide to buy a home? Like you just wanted to have an investment property, and then why did you have to be there? Was it because you were getting owner occupied financing?
Yeah, at the time, I was 27. I wasn't making a ton of money. I'm a really good saver, but I knew I wanted to do, I didn't know at the time it was called value add, but I wanted to do a value add. So I wanted to buy the ugliest house in the neighborhood and build it up, because that's my skill set. So I have my dad's knowledge and expertise, and I'm pretty handy myself, and I'm okay with living uncomfortably. So I kind of combined all of these strategies. So I wanted to do a house hack where I live in it so I could put less money down. And it wasn't that I didn't have the 20 or 25%, but I didn't have the 20 or 25% and the renovation budget. So I could either put down 3.5% and renovate, or put 20% and not renovate at all. So I opted to do the first strategy, and I moved in, I renovated, and then the rent by the room, I don't actually know where I got that from, but obviously someone gave me that idea, and it's been incredible. I think I get about $400 to $500 a month over market average.
Wow, that's incredible.
So you really can't, you can just charge more when you do it rent by the room.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you really haven't had that many issues then, I guess, right? Is it more to do with the screening process in terms of who you put in there?
Definitely. So the one thing that I did that I would love to do again is I really paid close attention to the types of finishes and the decor. And so because I was living in the house, I did furnish all of the living area space. It's funny, at the time I called it staging. And then someone corrected me. They're like, Sarah, you live here. Like, you're not staging the house, you furnish the house. I'm like, oh yeah. But in my mind, I think that's how I treated everything, is I treated it all like a business. So the decor that I even picked was not what I like. I'm pretty bohemian chic, but instead I did pinks and golds and fluffy throw pillows and marble, because that was the type of tenant I wanted to attract.
Smart. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so you went with, you figured out who your tenant was, and then kind of reversed it from there and figured out what kind of.
Yeah, and I was living in the property, and so I wanted like employed, nice 20-something girls. That was my ideal tenant.
It worked out like that, I guess, right?
Yeah.
How cool. So then you went and bought a duplex.
Yep.
Was it that also then somewhat of a house hack that you lived in and renovated?
Yeah, and this one's a really interesting. So, after owning the house for a year, I went on my like first true vacation. As we talked about, Americans not going on vacation. I went on my first true vacation to Belize, and I'm sitting on the beach, and I'm thinking, why do I live in Kansas? And obviously, there was a lot of reasons why I moved to Kansas and my investing goals. But after a year, I was like, why do I still live in this house? Like, I'm being lazy. Like, I need to do something big. And so I went home for Christmas that year. And I told my family, like, everyone, I'm going to rent out my room. I'm going to move abroad. And they said, great. Can you pass the gravy? And I'm like, you guys, like, this is big. Like, and they're like, Sarah, you're always doing something crazy. Like, this is not news to us. Like, and I was like, no, this is different. Like, I'm really like, I'm moving abroad. Like, I'm not going to Europe for 3 months. Like, I'm truly moving abroad. And they were like, oh yeah, good for you. Cool. Have a fun adventure. And so I did. I bought a one-way ticket to Argentina thinking that I would live there. And then I spent the whole next year traveling. And now this coming January will be my 2-year anniversary of being fully nomadic.
Wow. So why Argentina? Why did you go? Did you just picked it out? Somebody you had to be, and I was like, let me go there.
Yeah. It was always really top of mind. So there's some like digital nomad hotspots. So for any listeners, I'm sure that everybody kind of knows that it's Bali, Medellin, Colombia, and Lisbon, Portugal. And not at this time, but I had been to 2 of the 3 at the time. And I loved Portugal and I loved Colombia, but I just wanted to try somewhere new. And Buenos Aires is pretty high up there. There's stable internet, there's great cafes, there's a community of digital nomads, and it was awesome. I loved it. I miss it, actually.
Oh, really? Never been to Argentina. I'd love to go. But where did the duplex fit in all this? So you decided that you wanted to move abroad. Yeah. So at that point, then, did you decide that it doesn't really matter where I buy a house if I'm going to be living abroad?
Yeah, so it was a couple different things. So for some reason, I had been told that you have to live in your primary for 2 years. And I misunderstood that. And so as far as like mistakes that I've made in real estate, that would be one of them. I could have bought again a year later, another owner occupy in 2018, but I didn't. So I didn't buy anything in 2018. I waited until 2019, and I really got serious about June of that year. I had saved up enough capital that I had texted my agent that I had used previously. And I said, hey, I really want to find a house or a duplex, and I want to move into one unit, rent out the other unit. And so I was getting really impatient. By the time it was October, I still hadn't had anything. And so I actually flew back to the US to visit my family, but really to look for a property. And I was driving neighborhoods, I was knocking on doors, and just didn't come up with anything. Everything was going over asking, everything was multiple offer, which is likely, I mean, it's a story now still today. And so this was October of 2019. And in doing this, I remember I told you that someone heard my story and said, oh, you have to meet Jennifer. Mm-hmm. So I believe it would have been maybe August of last year that I met Jennifer on the phone. And I vividly remember I was in an Airbnb in Mexico City. I was basing myself in Mexico City at this time. I had left Argentina, and I'm in Mexico, and I'm talking to her. And she said, yeah, we should really continue this conversation. I'm putting together what we call an investor trip in Nashville, Tennessee. Would you like to come? And what I knew then is that, okay, this is like a 4-day interview, basically. Like, we're going to be together for 4 days, and she's going to vet me. Am I a good fit for the team? And the timing is really crazy. So at this point, I've joined her community. She's introduced me to the agent in Kansas City, who's helping me find this property. And it just so happened that while I was in Nashville, I get a text from my agent. He says, this just went on the MLS, you need to buy it. And I leaned over to someone who's now my colleague, and I said, hey, like, what should I do? And we crunched the numbers, and it was a deal, and I went under contract sight unseen.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So what did you like about the deal? What were kind of the numbers, and what made you say, okay, I need to take this on?
Yeah, so it was in a great neighborhood. So there's a few different neighborhoods in Kansas City that are really gentrifying and up and coming and cleaning up. And there's Columbus Park, which is where I really wanted to be, but the numbers just barely make sense, that they're already kind of starting to be overpriced. And then there's this adjacent neighborhood called Pendleton Heights. And so I loved that it was in Pendleton Heights. It was almost like exactly where I wanted it to be. It was an up-down duplex, a 3-1 on the bottom and a 3-1 up top. And the bottom unit was completely rent ready, and it was listed for, I think, 185. I ended up getting it for 180,500, and that actually was a really smooth close. Again, I think credit to the agent. There was a lot of weird things going on with permitting and everything, and he handled everything. And so he did a really good job. And I had met that agent through Jennifer, and then closed on it. I just flown into Nashville to meet Jennifer. I kind of got the job. It wasn't official that weekend, but I knew I did really well. And I flew back to Mexico. And while I was in Mexico, I did a remote close on the duplex in Kansas City.
Wow. So did you ever go to that property?
I did see it once. I did see it twice. I did from Nashville. I drove to Kansas, which I think, gosh, it's 8 or 10 hours. And I drove to my inspection, and I saw it then, but didn't see it again.
That's incredible. Did that one need any work?
It didn't.
Okay.
The upstairs unit does, but the way that I worked it out is, so I live in the upstairs unit with a roommate, and kind of negotiated that I would move in so that it would be owner occupied. And so again, I was able to put less than 25% down. And I live upstairs. And then with COVID, I never actually got a chance.
So you never actually ended up living there? Even
no, I do, like my things are there, and I live there on paper, like my driver's license, all my mail. Yeah. So that is my primary. I voted in Missouri.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as physically being there,
lives there, but that's not. Yeah. No, I'm not saying you're doing anything illegal. That's for sure. But
no,
yeah, because then your roommate is getting the whole place to themselves, pretty much, right? If you have one roommate.
Yeah. I'm the best roommate for anyone listening. Like,
for your next property, you'll have a list of people. Like, you'll have a waiting list of people who want to be a roommate for your next property.
Exactly. I'm never there.
And the Columbus property, you said, you've never seen that one at all, right? You've never
I've been to 40 something states, and I've never even been to Ohio.
Wow. So why did you pick Columbus, Ohio? Was it just that where that property picked up on the list, or was it had you been?
Yeah.
Okay.
The numbers. I mean, the numbers are just amazing. So I could pick this up for $130, rent it out all day long for $1,500, or I could renovate it and then rent it out for what is the math? 29. Yeah, so 3,000 basically. And it's just a great up and coming neighborhood. I trust the team. The team's great. And I think big things are happening in Columbus.
Yeah, Columbus is a strong market. That's for sure. They have a good job diversity, good job growth, good population growth, right? I invest in Cincinnati myself, but I like Columbus as well. But I'm committed to Cincinnati for now, so we'll see. And then that one, you said you're going to do are you doing, sorry, not to jump around from deal to deal, but it just made me think, you're using hard money on that deal, I believe, right? What are you getting?
Yeah, it's my first time. First time using hard money, 9.25.
Okay, that's not bad at all.
And I think 2.25 points.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then are they refunding? Are they not refunding? Are they funding? It'd be nice if they refunded. Are they funding the rehab, a portion of the rehab as well?
Yeah.
So how much are they? How much are you having to come up?
100%.
100% of the property and 100% of the.
No, so 75% of the property and 100% of the rehab, but in increments, in like a reimbursement.
That's still really good, because the rehab is, like you said, 110, 120,000. So to get 100% of that really puts you at, your leverage pretty good. So that's a great. Does your company provide hard money references as well, or referrals?
Yep. Okay. Yep. That's how I heard about this company, Certain Lending. I heard about them through Jennifer, and multiple people in the community have used them. I feel really good about them, and they've blown me away because this has been a really hard deal.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. What do you think it'll be worth once it's fixed up, do you think?
330.
Okay. So oh yeah, you have those comps, right? You have that other property.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what bought 130, say in for 120, so all in 250, say, and it'll be worthwhile. So even after then, you'll still have hopefully an 80K worth of equity to play with. That's pretty phenomenal. And then what do you think? What do you think your cash flow will be on that once you've done a cash out refinance?
Ooh, I haven't ran the numbers since my new renovation costs. Not great. I mean, it kind of depends on how much I want to leave in the deal. But it will cash flow.
Yeah.
And so, but it's not meeting, like if I was buying it conventional, I want to have at least $250 per door.
Mm-hmm.
And this won't hit that, but it'll probably be anywhere between, at least last time I ran the numbers, it was about $230 a month cash flow.
Oh, that's great when you consider you have no money in the thing, and you're building up equity and all that good stuff, right? And just that's unbelievable. The burst strategy is such a powerful thing, right? If you're able to do it and make it work, that's just so cool. Well, cool, man. This is such an interesting. You have such a fascinating story. I love it. I could have spent this whole time talking about the traveling. I love traveling myself.
I love those. Man, we could talk about real estate and travel all day long. I'd be very happy.
Yeah. If you ever come up with a podcast for yourself, you should call it that: real estate and travel, or something like that. I would. You'd have a listener here for sure. But as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I always like to ask wrestling-related real estate questions. And I did warn you beforehand to give you a little bit of a heads up. The first question is, what would your wrestling name be? If you picked a wrestling name for yourself, what would that be?
Oh, so I need does a good wrestling name have like a good adjective in it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe. So my friends back home, one of my friends is going to die that I've said this, but all my friends back home, they call me Sweeve. So Sarah Weaver Sweeve. Yeah. So I think Sweeve would have to be in my wrestling name. So I don't know if that's like, if I need an adjective before that, help me out.
The Sweeve works.
Okay.
The Sweeve. Yeah. Like you have The Rock, you have The Undertaker, the Sweeve. Okay. I like that. Yeah. Now, every wrestler has a special move. What would your special move be in real estate, you think?
Networking. I think I build relationships really quickly. Like my friends say, I'm really good at making fast friends. I will leave an airplane like with a boyfriend or a companion. Like I make fast friends, and in real estate, that looks like adding value to people. So I don't expect anything for free from someone. And so after I end a call, even if it's with a property manager that I end up not being able to use because I don't close on a property, I ask them like, how can I add value to you? And if they need a connection, I'm not hesitant to open up my Rolodex and make a connection. Sometimes I forget that I even made the connection. And then years later, I'm like, oh, you guys are friends? And they're like, yeah, Sarah, you introduced us. I was like, oh, yeah.
That's awesome. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your investing career, you think?
Yeah, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I think I need to because since I've started sharing about it, other people have had this experience. So my credit score, I'm very proud that it was over 800 for almost 8 years. I somehow learned about credit really early on, and in the US, it's unfortunately so important. And in buying this duplex, and because I was abroad, something happened with the mortgage company, and they mistranscribed my numbers on my auto pay. It didn't auto pay, so it didn't pay my mortgage. I didn't catch it because I wasn't checking my account every month. So lesson number 1, check your freaking account every single week, if not month. And to make sure and double check and triple check that your mortgage is getting paid for correctly, because I just made the assumption that it was taken care of and it wasn't. So my credit was dinged for a late payment on my mortgage, and my credit score took a nosedive. And I've been not only like embarrassed and ashamed because like this is what I do for a living, but it's just been so freaking frustrating.
We're talking a lot. Only divulge where you feel comfortable, but
yeah, I mean, gosh, I don't know what it hit at its lowest point, but it was definitely like, I want to say like 707, 710. So it dropped 100 points.
Yeah, that's big.
And it's climbing back up there. Like I'm fine now. I'm at the like threshold that you should be at, but it's definitely, I'm not at 800 anymore.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying.
Credit sucks because you work so hard to build it, right? It's so hard to build credit, right? And it takes a long time, but it only takes, like you said, a simple mistake and in a heartbeat, you've lost a ton of your points. And it's a painful process. It has to be a better way of some kind, right? It just drives me nuts. Yeah.
Absolutely. But the more I share this story, there's other people that this has happened to. And so I don't feel as stupid, but
you shouldn't feel stupid at all.
I was so mad.
Well, auto pay is an amazing thing, but like you said, it can get you in trouble. I definitely don't check all my payments. I could be late as we speak, but that's why I said, but I always set everything on auto pay straight away. I get my wife to do. I shouldn't say that I do, because it's just, then you don't forget, right? I'm really forgetful. So I got to make sure that I'm paying for it, but I can completely see how that's happening. So you shouldn't feel ashamed or embarrassed or anything. That's just such an easy thing to kind of miss, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm told, so it hasn't been a year yet, so this was February, but I am told that once next February passes, it should take a really big leap up. And so I shouldn't beat myself up that much, but until that happens, it's been so frustrating.
Well, don't beat yourself up. Definitely don't beat yourself up. So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it and how did you overcome it?
I think I'm doing it right now. I think this Ohio deal is it, man. Like it's so scary. I've never used hard money before. Even though I went under contract on the duplex, like sight unseen, I knew the neighborhood pretty intimately, and I know Kansas City at least a little bit. Mm-hmm. But Ohio, I've never even stepped foot in the state. I've never met any of the people I'm working with in person. I've never used hard money. I already said that, but I think that that's the biggest thing that's kind of like, but you read everywhere. I mean, Burr, everyone should Burr. You should try Burr. And so I'm doing it. And I told someone, I said it would be less scary if I had more money. Mm-hmm. And I talked to someone and they said that's just not true. Like that's just a limiting belief. Mm-hmm. Like it's not any less scary even if I had a couple more zeros in the bank account. It's still scary.
Yeah. No, I agree. And sometimes money can be a crutch as well. If you're like, okay, if I just wait till I have more. I hear people all the time that say, hey, I'm going to wait until in 2 years' time. I hear this all the time. In 2 years' time, I'll invest because I'll have saved enough money. I'm like, why don't you do it now? I don't have enough money. Well, how about I show you how to do it? You don't need, and I always tell people, and they have so much trouble understanding, you don't need a single penny to invest in real estate. Now, it doesn't mean that it's easy and you can just do it, but there's a million different ways that you can do it, right? The simplest way I always say is find a great property that's a great deal, find someone that has money, partner on them, do a flip, and then split the profits. You give someone a 15, 20% return on their money in 6 months' time. Who's going to say no to that, right? It doesn't matter what you make to them. So there's always a way, but money can be a crutch sometimes, I feel like, to people.
Yeah, you are absolutely speaking my language. And what's so crazy is that we have so many people out there who are saying like, oh, well, I can't do it because of this, this, and this. Yeah. And I'm like, I can't find a deal. I'm like, great, join our community. We sent 118 deals to our investors last month. Okay, so we got that taken care of. Oh, I can't figure out financing. Okay, then I'll introduce you to an investment savvy lender who will help you figure this out. And if that doesn't work, then we'll introduce you to private lenders or hard money. And so every problem in real estate is solvable. I think the hardest problem that investors have is their mindset.
Absolutely. You could, yeah, so true. The mindset, right? Because we have the ability to do whatever we want. It's just that ability to be able to get past that hurdle of thinking that we can't do it, that we shouldn't do it, outside voices, all that stuff, right? That's another podcast in itself, that mindset stuff about why people can do it. But that's so true. And what I love about the company that you're involved with and what you provide everything, right? You provide answers to everybody's I can't do it because, right? You have answers to all of that. So I love that. Anyone who can't do it, they should join this program, because there's no excuse. You guys remove the excuses. So I think that's so cool. I love that. So that's really cool. Well, Sarah, this has been so interesting, so fascinating. You got such a cool story, and you're so smart with everything you do. You really are amazing. I love that you're doing this in New Zealand right now. That's so cool. And like we even talked before, you've even been to a rugby game, so I love that.
Absolutely. And Barry, if I can, I want to announce something that I haven't told anyone.
Okay.
So I am doing my first virtual summit in February, and it is called the Investor Agent Summit. It will be for any real estate agent at any level, even if they've never heard of investing or even if they work with hundreds of investors, and it's free to attend. And
wow.
So it will be in February. I have not announced the dates yet. You are actually the 5th person that I'm telling. But it's happening and I'm really excited about it. We have 4 incredible speakers already committed, and I will have at least 15 by the time February rolls around. And this is exactly the type of event that someone should attend.
100%. I'll be. You have an attendee here for sure. I'll be there. And as things develop, I'll include the link in the description if you have anything to share. If not, I'll just put some details in there. And then for anyone else who's interested to reach out to you to find out more about what you're up to in terms of your travel, in terms of your company that you work with, how can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I find the most reliable is Instagram. I think most people are on it now. And so that's Sarah D. Weaver. We'll include it in the link. But yeah, reach out to me via Instagram or email. It's sarahdweaver@gmail.com. And I do love it when people reach out. So if you're listening and I've said something that really kind of stuck with you, or you have a question, or you want to poke holes in anything that I said, I love hearing from people. So definitely reach out.
Cool. Well, Sarah, this has been a phenomenal interview. Thank you so much for making the time. What time is it there? It's 4:13 here in Vegas. What time are you there?
Yeah, it's 1:00 on Saturday.
Okay. Oh yeah, you guys are ahead, right? Yeah, you're ahead.
I know. But I like to think of it, I'm only 3 hours behind you. So it's actually, the time zone's okay.
True. It's just, there's a day difference. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome. This has been such a fun interview. I really appreciate it. Have a fun time in New Zealand. I'm jealous of all your traveling exploits.
Thanks, Barry. I appreciate it.